The ground trembled beneath my feet as I heard that familiar rumble echoing through the African savannah. But this wasn't just any elephant call. It was a sound that haunted my dreams for 15 years, a voice I thought I'd never hear again. There, emerging from the dusty horizon like a ghost from my deepest memories, stood the massive silhouette of an elephant I was certain had forgotten I ever existed. My hands shook uncontrollably as a flood of memories crashed over me like a tsunami of emotions I thought I had buried forever. Maya had been just 3 months old when poachers brutally murdered her mother, leaving her traumatized and dying alone in the unforgiving wilderness. I was barely 22 then, a naive wildlife caretaker fresh out of college, working at a rescue sanctuary in Kenya with more heart than experience. She became my entire world, my obsession, my reason for questioning everything I thought I knew about the boundaries between human and animal souls. But sanctuaries aren't forever homes, and the day I was forced to say goodbye nearly destroyed me. When Maya turned 2, she was relocated to a massive reserve hundreds of miles away, where she could live among wild herds. I watched that transport truck disappear into the distance, carrying away the little soul who had taught me that love doesn't require the same species, the same language, or even the same world. Now standing face to face with her again after 15 years of wondering, hoping, and sometimes wishing I could forget, I felt my heart stop. Would she remember the human who bottle-fed her through countless sleepless nights? Would 15 years of wild freedom have erased the bond that once meant everything to both of us? My voice caught in my throat as I whispered her name into the wind, terrified of the answer. What happened next shattered everything scientists believed about elephant memory and proved that some connections transcend time, distance, and even the vast gap between species. This is the story of a reunion that will change how you see the animal kingdom forever. And I promise you, you're not prepared for what Maya did when she saw me again. Before I tell you the rest of this incredible story, I need you to understand something crucial. What you're about to hear challenges everything we thought we knew about animal emotions and memory. Scientists around the world are still studying the implications of what happened during my reunion with Maya. And the footage we captured that day is being used to rewrite textbooks about elephant intelligence and emotional capacity. If you've never been to my channel before, welcome to the place where extraordinary animal stories reveal the hidden connections between humans and wildlife. Every week, I share documented accounts that prove the natural world is far more emotionally complex and intelligent than we ever imagined. These aren't just feel-good stories, they're scientific revelations wrapped in experiences that will touch your heart and change your perspective forever. This particular story emerged from 15 years of wondering what happened to the elephant calf who changed my life. What started as a simple documentary filming assignment in Kenya became a reunion that wildlife researchers are calling one of the most significant human-elephant interactions ever recorded. The footage exists, the witnesses were there, and the implications are staggering for our understanding of animal consciousness. But before we dive into Maya's journey from orphaned calf to magnificent matriarch, I need 3 things from you. First, hit that subscribe button, because what I'm about to share will make you want to hear every single animal story I have waiting for you. Second, smash that like button if you believe animals are far more emotionally intelligent than we give them credit for. Here's where you become part of our global family. Drop a comment telling me exactly where in the world you're watching this right now. Are you bundled up in bed in Stockholm? Enjoying lunch break in Mumbai? Commuting to work in Sao Paulo? I read every single comment, and there's something magical about knowing this story is connecting hearts across every continent simultaneously. Let's create a beautiful map of people who believe in the power of interspecies love, one comment at a time. The emergency call that changed my life forever came through our radio at exactly 6:47 a.m. on a Tuesday morning I'll never forget. "We have a critical situation," Dr. Harrison's voice crackled with urgency through the static. "Orphaned elephant calf, approximately 3 months old, found wandering alone near the Tsavo East boundary. Severe malnutrition, possible trauma. Can you respond immediately?" My heart raced as I grabbed my emergency kit, knowing that in situations like these, every single minute could mean the difference between life and death. When I arrived at the temporary holding area 30 minutes later, Nothing in my veterinary training had prepared me for the devastating sight that awaited me. Huddled in the corner of a hastily constructed enclosure stood the tiniest, most broken elephant I had ever encountered. Her skin was dull gray and cracked like old leather, caked with dried mud that couldn't hide the tear stains permanently etched down her cheeks. But it was her eyes that stopped my heart, those ancient knowing eyes that held a depth of trauma and sorrow no baby should ever have to carry. Maya, as I would name her within hours, was severely malnourished and dangerously dehydrated. Her little trunk hung completely limp at her side, too weak even to investigate the strange new smells surrounding her. The veterinary team estimated she hadn't eaten in at least 5 days, possibly longer. Rangers had found her mother's carcass 2 miles away. Poachers had killed the magnificent matriarch for her tusks, leaving this precious 3-month-old soul to face the brutal wilderness completely alone. The psychological trauma was written in every trembling muscle, every flinch when any human dared to approach. That first night, I made a decision that would define the next 2 years of my life. I wasn't leaving her side. I dragged my sleeping bag into the corner of her enclosure, speaking softly to her in the suffocating darkness. "It's okay, little one," I whispered over and over, my voice barely audible above her labored breathing. "You're safe now, I promise you're safe. No one will ever hurt you again." She stood motionless for hours, as rigid as a statue, as if waiting for her mother's comforting rumble that would never ever come again. Around midnight, something shifted in the air between us. Maya took her first tentative step in my direction, her tiny trunk reaching out like a question mark suspended in the darkness. When the tip of her trunk barely brushed against my outstretched hand, tears streamed down my face uncontrollably. It was a moment of trust so fragile, so sacred, that I barely dared to breathe. In that single touch, I felt a tiny bridge being built between 2 broken hearts that desperately needed to heal each other. The following days blurred together in an exhausting marathon of round-the-clock intensive care. Every 2 hours, without exception, I fed Maya specially formulated elephant milk from an oversized bottle, watching with desperate hope as her strength slowly, gradually began to return. She started following me around the sanctuary like my own shadow, her trunk never straying more than inches from my hand. Other caretakers joked that she thought I was her mother, but I knew in my soul it was something far deeper and more profound than mere imprinting. During feeding times, Maya would press her tiny forehead directly against my chest, a behavior elephant calves typically share exclusively with their biological mothers. The gesture felt like a sacred pact being formed between us. She was choosing to trust again despite her trauma, and I was silently promising never to abandon her. Those precious moments taught me that healing isn't just about medicine and nutrition. It's about rebuilding faith in a world that had shown her nothing but cruelty and loss. As the weeks slowly passed, Maya's true personality began emerging like sunshine after a devastating storm. She was incredibly curious and remarkably intelligent, always getting into adorable mischief whenever I turned my attention elsewhere. She had developed a particular fondness for stealing my favorite hat and tossing it high into the air with her trunk, trumpeting with pure delight when I chased after it like we were playing the world's best game. These playful moments felt like victories, each laugh and joyful trumpet call serving as evidence that her wounded spirit was slowly, beautifully returning. The other elephants at the sanctuary gradually began accepting Maya into their makeshift family of orphaned souls. Temba, an older male who had also lost his mother to poachers when he was barely a year old, became her incredibly protective older brother. Kessie, a gentle female with deep scars along her side from a snare trap, would stand guard while Maya napped peacefully in the warm afternoon sun. Watching these traumatized orphans create their own loving family structure reminded me daily that love has countless forms, and sometimes the most beautiful families are the ones we choose rather than the ones we're born into. But even as Maya thrived and grew stronger each day, I knew with growing dread that this happiness wouldn't last forever. Sanctuaries are meant to be stepping stones to freedom, not permanent homes. The ultimate goal was always to prepare her for life in the wild, among her own kind, living the life her mother had dreamed of for her. As she grew more confident, and increasingly independent. I tried desperately to prepare my heart for the inevitable goodbye that was approaching faster than I ever wanted to acknowledge. 6 months after Maya's dramatic arrival, our bond had deepened into something that transcended every boundary I thought existed between human and elephant consciousness. She had transformed from a traumatized, dying infant into a confident, playful young elephant, but she still sought me out whenever uncertainty or fear crept into her expanding world. During the intense thunderstorms that regularly swept across the savannah, she would find me wherever I was and stand so close that I could feel her rapid heartbeat against my back, drawing comfort from my presence in the chaos. Maya had developed her own intricate language with me, a sophisticated system of subtle trunk touches and soft rumbles that only we understood completely. When she wanted my undivided attention, she would gently tap my shoulder with the tip of her trunk exactly 3 times. When she was genuinely happy, she would emit a low, continuous purring sound that vibrated through her entire body and into mine. When she missed her mother, which happened more frequently than I could bear to acknowledge, she would rest her trunk in my palm and simply breathe deeply, as if drawing strength and comfort from our unbreakable connection. The morning routine we established became the absolute highlight of every single day of my life. Maya would wait patiently by the gate every sunrise, somehow knowing exactly when I would arrive with her breakfast and morning cuddles. She learned to recognize my footsteps from hundreds of yards away and would trumpet softly in greeting when she heard me approaching through the morning mist. Sometimes I would arrive to find her already standing with her trunk extended toward the path, ready for our traditional morning greeting, where she would gently, tenderly touch my face with the sensitive tip of her trunk. Teaching Maya essential survival skills became my passionate mission and greatest responsibility. I showed her which plants were safe to eat and which ones could make her violently ill, how to use her trunk efficiently to strip nutritious bark from acacia trees, and how to dig for precious water during the harsh, dry seasons that could kill unprepared elephants. She was an incredibly eager student, watching my every movement with intense concentration that reminded me of a brilliant child learning to navigate the world. When she successfully mastered a new skill, she would look directly at me with what I could only describe as pure pride, as if desperately seeking my approval for her achievement. Other staff members at the sanctuary frequently commented on the unique, almost mystical relationship Maya and I shared. "She looks at you like you personally hung the moon and stars," Dr. Harrison observed one peaceful afternoon as Maya dozed contentedly with her massive head resting against my leg. It was absolutely true. There was something extraordinary in the way she looked at me, a recognition that went far beyond the typical caretaker-animal relationship. She seemed to understand instinctively that I was her chosen family, her anchor in a world that had shown her unspeakable loss and unimaginable cruelty. As Maya's first anniversary at the sanctuary approached, I began obsessively documenting her incredible progress with hundreds of photographs and detailed daily notes. I wanted to capture every precious moment of her transformation from broken, dying orphan to thriving, confident young elephant. The photographs told an amazing story that brought tears to everyone who saw them. Her eyes had regained their brilliant spark, her posture had straightened with newfound confidence, and most importantly, she had learned to trust again, despite the devastating trauma she had endured as an infant. Maya's integration with the other orphaned elephants continued to flourish beyond our wildest expectations. She had learned the complex social dynamics of elephant society by carefully observing Temba and Casey's every interaction. She understood hierarchy instinctively, showing appropriate respect to the older elephants, while also displaying natural leadership qualities with the newer arrivals who came to us broken and scared. Watching her comfort a newly rescued calf, offering the same gentle trunk touches that had once soothed her own terror, brought tears streaming down my face with pride. The rainy season brought exciting new challenges and adventures that revealed Maya's growing intelligence. She discovered the pure joy of mud, baths rolling enthusiastically in the red earth until she was completely covered from trunk to tail, then looking directly at me as if to say, "Look what amazing things I can do now." She learned to use sticks as sophisticated tools, carefully following my demonstrations of how to scratch those impossible-to-reach spots that elephants can never quite access alone. Every single day brought new discoveries, new reasons to celebrate her growing independence and confidence. But independence came with its own bittersweet reality that I tried desperately to ignore. As Maya grew stronger, more confident, and increasingly capable, she naturally spent more time bonding with the other elephants and less time seeking my constant comfort and reassurance. It was exactly what should happen according to every rehabilitation protocol, but my heart ached knowing that each passing day brought us inevitably closer to our separation. However, I wasn't prepared for what the sanctuary administration was planning. Dr. Harrison pulled me aside one evening with news that would change everything. Maya's progress has been so remarkable that she's been selected for early relocation to the Masai Mara Reserve. There's a matriarchal herd there that has successfully adopted orphaned elephants before, and they're willing to take her in. My world stopped spinning as the words hit me like a physical blow. During those precious, quiet evening moments, when Maya would still choose to come stand beside me as we watched the sunset paint the African sky in brilliant oranges and purples, I began memorizing every detail with desperate intensity. The way the golden light caught the growing wisdom in her eyes, the steady rhythm of her breathing, the incredible warmth of her presence beside me. These were the moments I would need to carry in my heart forever, treasures stored away for the lonely days I knew were coming far too soon. Maya's 18th month at the sanctuary marked a turning point that simultaneously filled me with overwhelming pride and devastating heartbreak. She had grown into a truly magnificent young elephant, standing nearly 4 feet tall and weighing close to 800 pounds of pure confidence and intelligence. Her remarkable social skills with the other elephants and her mastery of essential survival techniques indicated she was completely ready for the next phase of her rehabilitation journey. Integration with a wild herd in the vast Masai Mara Reserve, hundreds of miles away from everything we had built together. Dr. Harrison called me into his office on a grey Wednesday morning that I wish I could erase from memory. Maya's been officially selected for the relocation program, he said as gently as possible, clearly understanding how devastating this news would be for me to hear. There's a matriarchal herd in the Mara, led by a female named Sekai, who has successfully adopted orphaned elephants before. They've agreed to take Maya in, and frankly, this is the opportunity we've been preparing her for since the day she arrived. My heart shattered even as my rational mind understood this was the ultimate goal of everything we had worked toward together. The preparation process would require 3 agonizing months, Dr. Harrison explained with clinical detachment. Maya needed to be gradually weaned from all human contact and encouraged to form stronger, more dependent bonds with the other elephants, who would eventually become her surrogate family during the transition. This meant I would need to step back completely, allowing other caretakers to take over her daily care while I watched from an increasingly painful distance. The irony wasn't lost on me. My success in helping her heal meant I had to break my own heart. Those first few days of enforced reduced contact were absolute torture for both of us. Maya would search desperately for me during feeding, times her trunk reaching frantically through the fence toward my familiar scent. I could hear her calling for me every evening, a lonely trumpet that echoed across the entire sanctuary and pierced straight through my soul like a knife. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to run to her, to comfort her obvious confusion and fear. But I knew that maintaining this distance was an act of love, not abandonment. But here's what nobody had prepared me for. Maya wasn't giving up on our bond that easily. She began escaping from her designated area almost daily, somehow managing to find me no matter where I tried to hide on the sanctuary grounds. The first time she tracked me down to the equipment shed, pressing her trunk against the door and rumbling softly until I emerged. I nearly broke down completely. "You have to let me go, Maya," I whispered through my tears. "You have to learn to be with your own kind now." She just looked at me with those impossibly intelligent eyes, as if to say, she understood but wasn't ready to accept it yet. Gradually, painfully, Maya began forming closer relationships with the other orphaned elephants who would be relocating with her to the Mara. Temba became her constant companion and mentor, teaching her advanced foraging techniques and the subtle communication methods wild elephants use to coordinate complex herd movements across vast territories. Kessie shared her hard-earned knowledge of predator awareness and the critical importance of staying close to the group during dangerous long-distance migrations. Watching Maya integrate so naturally into their makeshift family filled me with bittersweet joy and devastating sadness simultaneously. As the weeks crawled by with excruciating slowness, I documented every milestone in Maya's development with obsessive detail. She mastered incredibly complex trunk techniques for breaking thick branches and learned to use her sensitive feet to test ground stability near potentially dangerous water sources. Her communication skills evolved dramatically. She could now produce over a dozen distinct vocalizations, each with its own specific meaning understood by the other elephants. The transformation from helpless, traumatized orphan to capable, confident young elephant was nothing short of miraculous, and I was losing her because of it. The night before her departure, I broke every protocol and spent one final evening with Maya under the star-filled African sky. We sat together in comfortable silence that spoke volumes, her massive head resting in my lap just like in the old days. "You're going to have the most amazing life," I whispered to her in the darkness, my voice breaking with emotion. "You're going to be free, completely free, surrounded by your own kind, living exactly the life your mother would have wanted for you. And maybe someday, if the universe is kind, our paths will cross again." Maya seemed to understand with heartbreaking clarity that this was our final goodbye. She pressed her forehead against mine, a behavior she hadn't displayed since her earliest days at the sanctuary when she was too traumatized to trust anyone. In that sacred moment, I felt the full weight of our shared journey, from her terrified arrival as a dying orphan to this confident young elephant ready to reclaim her rightful place in the wild. The circle was completing itself, but it was leaving my heart irreparably changed forever. The transport team arrived at dawn, bringing with them a specially designed truck that would carry Maya and her companions to their new home in the Mara. As the team prepared the loading procedures, Maya kept looking back at me with eyes full of questions I couldn't answer without completely falling apart. "Go," I told her through streaming tears. "Go and be everything you were meant to be. Be wild, be free, be happy." The truck doors closed with a finality that echoed through my chest, taking away the peace of my heart I had freely given to an orphaned elephant who had taught me the true meaning of unconditional love. As the vehicle disappeared into the morning haze, leaving nothing but dust and tire tracks, I stood completely alone in the sanctuary that suddenly felt impossibly empty and meaningless. Maya was beginning the most important chapter of her life, but I was left with nothing but memories, photographs, and the desperate hope that somewhere in the vast African wilderness, she would somehow remember the human who had loved her through her darkest days and celebrated every moment of her return to the light. 15 long years passed like pages in a book. I couldn't stop reading, but desperately wanted to rewrite with a different ending. Every single day since Maya's departure, I carried her memory like a sacred talisman, wondering obsessively if she was safe, if she was happy, if she was thriving in her wild home, and if she ever thought about the human who had bottle-fed her through those critical early months. Life at the sanctuary continued its relentless rhythm, with new orphaned elephants, arriving regularly, each one tugging at my heartstrings, but none quite filling the Maya-shaped void in my soul that seemed to grow larger rather than smaller with time. I threw myself into my work with renewed passion and almost desperate intensity, perhaps as a way to honor the profound bond we had shared. Over those 15 years, I helped rehabilitate and release over 200 orphaned elephants, each success story representing a small victory in the ongoing war against poachers and habitat destruction that continued to rage across Africa. Yet in quiet moments, usually during that golden hour when the African sun painted everything in warm, nostalgic hues, my thoughts would inevitably drift to Maya, wondering if she watched the same sunsets from her place in the distant Masai Mara. The first updates about Maya came sporadically through the Wildlife Monitoring Network, and they were incredibly encouraging. She had successfully integrated with Sekai's matriarchal herd and was thriving in her natural habitat better than anyone had dared to hope. A camera trap captured grainy but beautiful images of her at 3 years old, standing tall and proud beside her adoptive mother, a magnificent matriarch whose tusks gleamed in the dappled sunlight. Seeing those photos filled me with indescribable joy, even as they confirmed what I already knew. She had moved on completely from her sanctuary days and the human who had raised her. As the years continued to roll by with increasing speed, the updates became less and less frequent until they stopped entirely. Maya had become just another elephant in a herd of 50, living the anonymous life that was always the ultimate goal of our rehabilitation efforts. Occasionally, researchers conducting aerial surveys would mention sighting her during their reports. She was healthy, had learned to navigate seasonal migrations perfectly, and showed all the complex behaviors of a completely well-adjusted wild elephant. The absence of news was actually the best news possible, indicating she no longer needed any human intervention to survive and thrive. My own life evolved dramatically during those 15 years of wondering and waiting. I was promoted to head of rehabilitation at the sanctuary, married Sarah, a brilliant veterinarian who shared my passionate dedication to wildlife conservation, and we adopted 2 incredible children from the local community whose parents had been killed by the same poachers who destroyed so many elephant families. Our home became filled with laughter, love, and the constant presence of orphaned animals in various stages of recovery. Yet Maya remained like a tender bruise on my heart, the one who had started my journey toward understanding the profound connections possible between humans and wildlife. Sarah often gently teased me about my elephant obsession, but she understood perfectly the significance of Maya in my life story. She listened patiently as I recounted the same memories over and over, bottle-feeding sessions at midnight, morning greetings that felt like prayers, and the trust-building exercises that had transformed a traumatized orphan into a confident young elephant ready for freedom. "She was your first," Sarah would say with a knowing, understanding smile. "She taught you how to love these creatures completely without trying to possess them or make them dependent on you." Our children, now 8 and 10 years old, had grown up hearing Maya's story told like a sacred bedtime tale. They knew every detail of her dramatic rescue, her healing process, and her eventual release into the wild. During family dinners, they would ask with genuine curiosity, "Daddy, do you think Maya remembers you after all this time?" And I would honestly answer that I didn't know, but hoped she was too busy living her magnificent wild elephant life to dwell on her sanctuary days. Deep down, though, I wondered the exact same thing every single day, sometimes multiple times a day. Technology advances in wildlife monitoring gave us incredible new tools to track elephant populations across vast territories, but I deliberately resisted the constant temptation to actively search for Maya using these systems. She deserved her privacy, her life completely free from human interference and observation. The greatest gift I could possibly give her was the freedom to exist without being studied, photographed, collared, or documented. True love, I had learned through painful experience, sometimes means letting go so completely that you don't even try to hold on to memories. Climate change and dramatically increased poaching activities in the region became growing concerns as Maya entered her prime reproductive years. Devastating reports of drought-stressed herds desperately searching for water across ever-shrinking territories made me lie awake at night, worrying about her welfare and survival. The same conservation challenges that had brutally orphaned her as a helpless baby continued to threaten elephant populations throughout East Africa with increasing intensity. My work took on new urgency as we faced an uncertain and increasingly dangerous future for these magnificent, irreplaceable creatures. As I approached my 40th birthday, I found myself wondering obsessively what Maya looked like now in her full maturity. Was she a mother herself, passing on the survival skills we had taught her to a new generation of elephants? Had she become a respected member of her herd, maybe even a leader? Did she still have that mischievous glint in her eye when she was planning some elaborate elephant mischief? These questions remained frustratingly unanswered floating in the vast space between cherished memory and impossible hope, between a past I treasured and a future I could only imagine in my dreams. The unexpected invitation to participate in a major wildlife documentary about elephant conservation success stories arrived during one of the most chaotic and demanding periods of my entire career. The internationally renowned film crew wanted to highlight remarkable rehabilitation stories from various sanctuaries across Africa, and Maya's story had somehow caught their attention through the extensive research networks that connected conservation efforts across the continent. After weeks of deliberation and countless conversations with Sarah about the emotional risks involved, I finally agreed to participate, hoping desperately that sharing our story might inspire millions of people worldwide to support critical elephant conservation efforts. The filming was scheduled to take place over 10 days in the Masai Mara, where several documented successful reintegration stories could be filmed in their natural setting with wild herds as the backdrop. When the enthusiastic production coordinator casually mentioned that we would be visiting the exact same area where Maya had been released 15 years earlier, my heart began racing with possibilities I didn't dare acknowledge fully. The logical part of my brain kept reminding me that the Mara ecosystem was absolutely vast, containing thousands of elephants scattered across hundreds of square miles of wilderness. Sarah immediately noticed my excitement and barely contained nervousness as I prepared for the trip with unusual intensity. "You're hoping to see her, aren't you?" she asked one quiet evening as I obsessively packed and repacked my camera equipment for the third time. I couldn't deny the truth any longer. The possibility of encountering Maya had completely consumed my thoughts since accepting the documentary invitation. "I know it's completely irrational," I admitted to her, "but what if the universe has been planning this reunion all along? What if this is meant to happen?" The film crew and I arrived in the Mara on a crystal-clear Tuesday morning, the air crisp with the promise of adventure and the faint possibility of magic. Our local guide, James, had been tracking elephant herds in this region for over 20 years and knew the movements and behaviors of individual elephants better than anyone alive. When I mentioned Maya's name and described her early history and the circumstances of her release, his weathered eyes immediately lit up with unmistakable recognition. "Ah, you mean the famous orphan who joined Sekai's family group," he said with a knowing smile that made my heart skip. "She is quite well known among us guides. Very intelligent elephant, very special indeed." We spent the first 2 days filming various conservation segments and conducting lengthy interviews with local researchers about elephant behavior, migration patterns, and the ongoing challenges facing wild populations. Each evening, as we sat around the campfire reviewing footage and planning the next day's shoots, I found myself compulsively scanning the darkening horizon, hoping to catch even a glimpse of familiar silhouettes against the stunning sunset. James noticed my obvious distraction and suggested we visit a particular watering hole known to be frequented regularly by Sekai's extended family group and their adopted members. The morning of our third day dawned absolutely perfect, cloudless and crystal clear, ideal conditions for filming. We positioned our cameras strategically near the watering hole just as the first golden light began painting the ancient acacia trees in brilliant hues. Within an hour, we could see distant dust clouds rising from the savannah, the unmistakable sign of a large elephant herd approaching the water source. My heart began pounding so hard, I was sure the sound equipment would pick it up as I watched through my telephoto lens, scanning each approaching figure for features I might somehow recognize after so many years. Sekai's magnificent herd emerged, from the tree line like African royalty processing to an ancient ceremony. The incredible matriarch led the procession with regal dignity, her massive tusks gleaming brilliantly in the morning sun, followed by dozens of elephants of various ages, moving in perfect harmony. I watched intensely through my camera lens, studying each face for any detail that might trigger a memory, any feature that might connect to the little elephant I had loved so completely. Then, about halfway through the seemingly endless procession, I saw her. Maya stood slightly apart from the main group, her head held high with the unmistakable confidence of a mature elephant who had found her rightful place in the world. She was absolutely magnificent, tall, powerful, and bearing the scars and wisdom that come from years of authentic wild living. Her tusks had grown into impressive ivory curves, and her body showed the strength of an elephant in her absolute prime. But it was her eyes that confirmed every hope I'd carried for 15 years. Those same intelligent, soulful eyes that had first looked at me with terror and gradually learned to trust were now surveying her surroundings with the calm assurance of an experienced, successful elephant. As if sensing my intense gaze across the 50 yards that separated us, Maya suddenly stopped drinking and lifted her magnificent head. Across that distance, our eyes met for the first time in 15 years, and the entire world seemed to pause in recognition. I watched as something flickered across her features, a moment of confusion, then concentration, then what looked impossibly like recognition. She stood perfectly still for what felt like an eternity, her trunk raised slightly as she tested the air for familiar scents that time and distance could never completely erase. What happened next will remain burned into my memory until my dying day and changed everything I thought I understood about elephant memory and emotion. Maya began, walking directly toward me with slow, deliberate steps, her stride purposeful and completely unhurried. The film crew whispered excitedly behind their cameras, but their voices seemed to come from another world. All I could focus on was the approaching figure of the elephant who had changed my life forever, who was now closing the gap between our separate worlds with each magnificent, intentional step that defied every scientific assumption about animal memory and attachment. Maya stopped exactly 10 feet away from where I stood, frozen in disbelief, close enough that I could see the wisdom lines around her eyes, the small scar on her trunk from an old encounter with thorns, and most incredibly, the unmistakable recognition in her gaze. For a moment that felt suspended outside of time itself, we simply looked at each other, the middle-aged human and the majestic elephant, connected by memories of bottle feedings, midnight comforts, and a love that had somehow transcended 15 years, hundreds of miles, and the vast gap between our species. Then Maya did something that brought the entire film crew to tears and silenced every scientist who later viewed the footage. She extended her trunk toward me in the exact same gesture she had used as a 3-month-old baby when she desperately wanted reassurance and comfort. When I slowly, carefully reached out my trembling hand, she gently touched my palm with the sensitive tip of her trunk, the identical greeting we had shared thousands of times during those precious sanctuary days. In that single electric touch, I felt 15 years of separation dissolve into nothing. She remembered everything. After all this time, living completely wild and free, surrounded by her chosen elephant family, she still remembered the human who had helped her heal from the deepest trauma imaginable. The reunion lasted only a few precious minutes before Maya rejoined her waiting herd. But those moments proved something that scientists are only beginning to understand about elephant memory, emotion, and the profound connections possible between species. Love leaves permanent imprints on the heart that time cannot erase, regardless of species, distance, or circumstances. As Maya disappeared back into the vast African landscape where she belonged, where she was meant to be, I knew our story had found its perfect ending. She was exactly where she should be, living exactly the life she was born to live, and knowing she remembered our bond made letting go the second time not a goodbye, but a celebration of a connection that time, distance, and even death itself could never break. If this story moved your heart the way it moved mine, remember to subscribe for more incredible true animal stories that will change how you see the world. Give this video a thumbs up to help other people discover Maya's amazing journey, and tell me in the comments where in the world you're watching from right now. These stories of love, hope, and connection are meant to be shared across every continent, reminding us all that love truly knows no boundaries, no species, and no limits.